Welcome to the PBE Podcast. We are live. We are here at Olympia Hills Golf Course and Event Center in Universal City, where the Austin Chalk and the Eagleford at hole number 8 is actually bleeding hydrocarbons into the creek. And so it's like, wait a minute, you know, for 100 years we've been finding oil by seepage, right?
Yeah,
like, hey, if there's oil here, we should probably drill this, and there's probably more of it. So one of the first questions was, I wonder if there's oil under this. You know, should we drill it?
That's true.
And so Mr. Alan Lazenby Jr., we're going to start this show. We just did the golf course. We'll probably eventually get into raffle and who won this thing. They're going to get those gypsum towers. You see those, that each player that wins this tournament gets those gypsum towers over there. Yes. So best score walks away with some really cool minerals. And we'll get into that. But first, I wanted to... let's start with some stay positive quotes. I want to get an image of kind of your perspective, your positivity, your encouraging quotes, and what you hear from this. So I'm going to randomly stop.
Okay.
And we're going to see if it hits you. So tell me when to stop.
Stop.
I stopped it right when you said it. That was exactly where you said it. All right. When you face a setback, think of it as a defining moment that will lead to a future accomplishment.
That's true.
So how do you recycle a setback if you're in that moment, right? And you just felt like it didn't happen. It's a setback, you know? How do you recycle that into future accomplishments?
Well, first, everyone has setbacks. I have more setbacks probably this morning than most. But you learn from your setbacks. You gather data, which is wisdom, and you go forward. So in my opinion, if you need to listen right here to your gut.
Man.
And I'm going to tell you, this here, besides my wife over there,
she also has a gut feeling on what's going on.
Unbelievable gut feeling. Actually, better gut feeling than me.
Hey, but I think we all can relate.
Yeah, it's true. You just need to really listen to your gut. If your gut says do it, you pull the trigger. I have so many friends that have setbacks, and it basically sets them back, not moves them forward. So just listen to your gut, and if it says yes, go for it. And if your wife says yes and go for it, you just do it double hard. That's true. That's true. Women have a really, for what it's worth, a real sense of who you should run with, who you shouldn't run with.
Wow.
And
wow.
That's just the truth. It's
Man,
the truth.
And I love that because the women are applauding. They're literally applauding this.
It's true. It's so true. It's so true.
Hey,
that's my compass.
Oh man,
39 years.
Your compass
of marriage and 5 years of dating before that. So it's a pretty good compass.
Wow! Congratulations, man.
She's a good girl.
Hey, did she meet Pablo?
Oh, no.
All right. Did she know you were going to meet Pablo when you met Pablo?
No, not at the time.
All right.
The next day.
We're going to...
Next day.
We'll get into that. But let's stop it one more time. I like what you're saying.
Okay, stop.
Okay, here we go. True leaders, all right? True leaders. Mm-hmm. The leaders, the people we vote for to lead. The true leaders don't lead to gain power. They lead to empower and give power away. How do you recycle that?
Well, you don't see any of that today, in my opinion.
So that's not encouraging. That's not a mess. That's not fueling your life. That's not positive energy.
No,
that's a problem.
That's negative. Politics is negative energy, just period. And essentially, if the politicians are saying do it this way, I can tell you better be running that way. It's true.
And that goes with international. I mean, you're talking.
That comes from experience.
That's how we operate.
Be a contrarian to a politician. Just always remember that, because they're always in the long run, you're going to find the politicians wrong. I'm sorry, it's just true. They're politicians.
Yeah,
they're politicians.
I mean, when I think about politics, and I don't do it a lot, But when I do, I think of similar things like with geology and how we've progressed in science. Science actually moves way slower than academia, than industry. It's on a totally different trajectory. We're trying to figure out what's really going on with the data, and at the same time, you have a businessman that's ready to make a decision on this to make money. And so the science is moving slow, and the industry and academia and all these people and energy is trying to figure it out, while this science is actually trying to slowly figure it out, right? Because it's not, you don't get to talk to Earth and get an answer today about the decision you need to make. The reservoirs take years to understand. Like your reservoir, when you started the heavy oils in Colombia, you probably started that with a bit lighter of fluid right up front, and then eventually the hydrocarbons got heavier and sludgier, right? So you got in there and said, okay, I'm going to drill this well. The first 6 months you said, oh man, let's drill 10,000 of these if they're going to do this. And then 6 months later, that had a massive decline curve and it stopped making money, right? Something happened and it got sludgier and it got harder to produce. And then in 6 months, you've totally recycled that into a better decision. So that's a small scale of what politics are doing, in my opinion. They're trying to make decisions on information that's just not ready for them to sometimes do.
Let me tell you, that's a good analogy that you use, the well. When, again, my Colombian experience was in 1989 to 2000. So this is a long time ago. This is before
Hey, it's not that
cell
long
phones.
ago.
It's a long time
I was
ago,
there. I was there for it.
But we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have, listen to this, we didn't have horizontal drilling.
Right.
We didn't have many things as far as technology. And at that time, it was just straight vertical wells, heavy crude oil. But now with the new technology, let's fast forward to 2023, or just now, these wells, the technology's just outstripped. It's just unbelievable what you can do, and that's what I see in this industry. I can't tell you, when I was in school, you didn't drill the Eagleford.
Right.
The source rock, the shells were the source rocks, not the reservoir.
Not the reservoir.
And
That's
now,
right.
and where are we going to be 20 years from now? I don't know. But I am so glad to see a room full of fossil fuel finders. We're not criminals. We care about the geology. We care about the community. We care about in nature. We really care, but that's not the message that the other side's presenting. But I can tell you, we're going to win the game because we have the energy density, and that's what's going to win this game. In 100 years, when I'm gone, Troy's gone, you're still going to see the combustible engine. You're still going to see the fossil fuel. Somebody's got to make these styrofoam cups. I'm glad you had it.
That's true. That is true. But who
I don't
knows?
know if I answered your question, but
well, we're just talking. I want to
Okay.
get behind the philosophy of who you are and kind of what you've done. I want to better understand the story. I mean, there's a report that just came out. We have kids in the room, right, that are growing up in this. They're trying to figure out their place in the energy and density position that we're in, as you put it, energy density. And the idea was that the young generation is now saying that we see a future that has combustion engines. We see a future that has oil and gas. It doesn't work without it, and they see that. So the future markets of the commodity is one thing. How we actually develop it and how we get more efficient at doing that, at the same time, battery technology, ability to store the energy, because right now we have to burn a lot of it and make a lot of it to sustain what we use. For these lights to work on an instant, that's constant energy output, and when we use it, it uses it up. If we use too much of it, it starts messing the power grid, and then it'll blow out. But we have enough of it being made, but it doesn't just turn off. It doesn't store. If we don't burn it and we don't use it like that, then those lights aren't going to work. So we have to sustain that mill, right? That we have to sustain that energy output until battery technology advances. And I think there's a future in that with graphene. Have you heard of the material graphene?
No.
It's a hydrocarbon. It's a hydrocarbon. It's keratin, essentially. It's a hydrocarbon. And it stores electricity better than any other known material. And America has a massive deposit of it in Arizona. One of the largest that's ever been found, potentially, of graphene.
Never heard of that. But.
It's fascinating stuff. And I think there's something there. There's something with battery technology and battery life expanding drastically. But we're always going to need to lube the gearboxes. We're always going to need oil for sure.
It's here. It's
right.
It's been here 100. It's going to go another 100 years.
Well,
then some.
Let's rock it back.
Okay,
Not quite
let's
100
go.
years, but where were you born? What's your story?
I'm from Wichita Falls, and actually I went to school at Wichita Falls High School. My wife went to Ryder, the bad school. And anyway, we met in college at Midwestern State University. And
What was the event? It wasn't a ping pong game, was it?
no, it was a fraternity mixer, Alpha Phi mixer. I can tell you, it was Halloween of 1979.
Yes. What were you wearing? Take me back.
I was wearing a.
Let me guess. Hold on. I want to
was
guess.
a medical doctor's scrubs and a stethoscope. And Denise was
here.
I think she was in a nun outfit.
Oh my gosh, this is great. This is perfect.
And anyway, she was bobbing for apples, and she hurt her knee. And I, being in the fraternity, I had the best. It's no joke. I was I can go on the record and say this. I was the youngest emergency medical technician in the state of Texas in 1979. And I had the best medical kit in my 77 Trans Am, carried it in the trunk.
Yeah.
And so when everybody came back to the room and said, man, this girl just bumped her knee, she needs some medical assistance, I ran in. That was the first time I had ever seen her, and I fell in love with her as soon as I saw her.
Come on.
That's the honest to God truth. The hardest girl to date. I fixed her knee, took her to her car, and I said, well, I'd like to maybe we can go have lunch next week. And she rolled her car window down about that much, and she looked and she said, perhaps, and then she drove off.
Oh man.
What the hell did that mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, so we literally went out to lunch the next week. Anyway, we've met and we're still together today.
Man.
So
When did you start having kids?
we have one son. He lives in London.
Whoa.
Rob will be 33, I guess, August 7th.
Wow.
So we have one child, and basically, I'm fortunate. I just have one wife.
And what's your son do?
No, he's. You can Google it. www.onepiece.com. It's onesies for adults.
What?
It's very popular. All the Hollywood elite.
What? They're into onesies?
You go look at www.onepiece.com. It's very comfortable. You don't see me wearing one. But
What? Is this? Are you messing with me
no,
right
I'm
now?
not.
Where's your wife?
Go
Is he messing
they're
with
really
me?
Cool.
This is a real thing?
Yeah.
Grown-up onesies?
Onesie. They're. I mean, all the Kardashians,
What?
Jamie Lee. I mean, Fox. All the people. All the
wearing these things.
older people that I know wear them, but it's called One Piece. They're very nice. They're good for ski wear. People go skiing and they come back and they want to sit around. It's a zip. It's a basically zipper from here all the way down to here. And
all right. The reason I'm laughing so much because I have a 7-month-old.
It's a great.
And she's got the exact same thing. I'm like 7 months old. Big toe to
One
neck.
Piece. ONEPIECE. All one word.
I cannot believe that.
Oh yeah, he's got a nice side.
He's got a side hustle.
They're expensive.
Right.
They're
of course. I mean, if the Kardashians are rocking them, those things are $10,000 a piece. They're probably made.
Beyonce, or is it Beyonce? I don't know how you say it. She rocks one. She rocked one in Iceland, I think, at a photo shoot. But anyway, that's it. That's what Rob does.
I did
it's
not see that.
Totally non-energy related. But
it takes a while to make those spandex.
Yeah.
It takes oil to make those things.
Well,
That's cool, man. I'd
Yeah.
love to get one that's like a race car driver
Well,
or something.
I
Walk
bet-
around the house with my kids.
I bet we can get a PBE
Is that right?
logo on there.
What'd you name your son?
Yeah, his name's Rob with 2 B's, ROBB,
Rob.
Rob, and he's definitely a ROBB, not a Robert. And that's our family unit.
Wow.
You know.
All right. Onesies, PBE onesies. I'm going to talk to Rob, see if we can get that, hand them out as gifts.
We can do that. We can make that happen.
Man. All right. I didn't see it going there. I appreciate you sharing that.
Well, thanks for the free advertisement. Too.
There you go. All right. So transition us from, you get a petroleum engineering degree. What degree are you getting in college?
Geology.
Oh, okay.
And at Midwestern at that time. And I went from there in 85 to Houston.
Oh man.
And we've been in Houston ever since.
Wow.
I explored the gun site, all the what I'm gonna say, the Fort Worth Basin.
Okay.
And it's hard to make money up there, or it was at that time. So and at that time, I decided it was best if Denise and I moved to Houston to be in the energy corridor.
Wow.
Which is, it was, if you're upstream, midstream, downstream,
all
you
there.
need to be in Houston.
Yeah, but
my opinion.
The crash of '86 is about to happen.
Yeah,
Did you see that coming?
Well, didn't see it coming, but I lived it. Essentially, we moved to Houston in '85. '86 came. I was in Paris in February, right 2 weeks before the crash.
Wow.
Giving a speech to a French audience on buying production acquisitions in the United States.
Wow.
Yeah,
You
and
were
it was at the
syndicating.
Concord Lafayette Hotel, right there on the Champs-Élysées, and that was great. Then I come home, and 2 weeks later, the price crashed.
Crash, right.
And that deal fell apart.
Right, I'm sure.
That deal fell apart.
Yeah, they're like,
But,
maybe real estate's better. or
But
something.
I went there because I had a friend. This is a funny story. I'll just tell you quickly. Came from Paris, and he, a Parisian, older gentleman, and he said, "I'd like to meet you." And I said, "Well, why don't you fly here to Wichita?" He was going to be over. He flew. Denise and I were getting married, and he was going to land the day before we were married. And anyway, so I wait to hear from him again. No cell phones.
You didn't even have a pager?
No pager, no nothing. Anyway, he flew from Paris, Charles de Gaulle, to Wichita, Kansas, not Wichita Falls, Texas.
Wow, that's
so
different.
He called and said,
Different.
"Well, I'm here, but I said, "Well, you're not in the wrong. You're in the wrong city. You're in the wrong town." So he had to actually go back to Dallas. Anyway, he made it. We said hello, and that was it. But basically, I developed a very good relationship with that gentleman, and the name of that company is Georex, Georex. Don't confuse it with the Georex of in the UK. That's a condom company. It's not that.
That's not you.
It was
for the
Georex,
record.
and basically it was a big energy company. And what he did at that time in France, at that time there was called Elf Octane, and there was Petrofina and Total, and he essentially was what I'm calling the Kelly Girl. He would hire out engineers, hire out drilling engineers, hire out geologists to the French societies, because at that time in France, if you hire somebody, you couldn't get rid of them. You couldn't fire them. I mean, it was it. So basically, he built his business model was, I'll just hire all the geologists and engineers and all the people, and they can work for me, and then they can go inside your companies and do work for you. It was
And
a way.
he was getting a cut from all the income from
all
their-
those
their
from all that.
salaries.
And Georex, they went forever.
It's like
and
an
he did
opportunity.
So, yeah, I met him, and we had a great relationship. And at that time, I told him, I said, they were interested in oil and gas acquisitions or exploration in the United States, and I was at that time found out, man, it's just too crowded here. There's too many people doing things here, and I said, I still want to help you here, but I need to go south, to go international. He didn't want anything to do with that, but it was that money I was making from doing consulting for him in Texas,
right,
that I took that money and I could build my company.
You started financing your own company?
That's how I financed it. I financed it by consulting contract with him.
Wow, right on. And you
then,
went to Columbia.
Yeah, and the reason I did it, it's simple. Everyone was, again, I'm a contrarian. If everybody's running that direction, I may run that direction too, but first I'm going to
go check it out.
Go check out the back. And we did. So
crazy.
When I went down there, this is in the late 80s, it was bad. Right. Everybody was, Exxon, all the big boys were pulling out, except BP. BP was actually moving in, and they had a big discovery, Cusiana and Cupiagua, and that really saved Colombia, to be honest, as far as in the energy industry. But so I went down there because, why? Here in Texas, if you put a deal together, you may have to have 100 landowners, or or just a lot of people.
Mineral
ownership.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, finish the story. In Colombia, you deal with a government, and you could lock up big tracts of land, very inexpensive, for just what they would call work programs. And that's what we did. We went down there, and I did not discover Rubialis. Rubialis was actually discovered in '82 in a stratigraphy drilling program by Exxon.
Oh, wow.
Exxon was drilling 10 stratigraphic wells across the country. And what happened in one of these stratigraphic wells of Rubialis, they found a 30-foot oil column at 2,500 feet.
On a structure? It was sitting in a...
No structure. It's just it was just a strat well. They were going from the Pacific coast all the way to the jungles of the Amazon, just doing 10 strat wells across the country. Wow. And this has just happened to be one of 3 strat wells they did in the Llanos Basin.
Did you have special access to this? How did you get that data?
Ecopetrol. All the data that everything you do in Colombia goes to, at that time, it's a total different situation now, but it went to Ecopetrol. So Ecopetrol had all the data. All you had to do is go and look at the data. And my problem is that discovery, there was it was a rough neighborhood at that time because there was no infrastructure. There was no roads.
Whoa.
There was nothing.
It was like
there was the Meta
people?
River. It was the indigenous people would have been the Medellin cartel labs that was out there in the area where they cooked the cocaine. And while I was in Colombia, I'll be very honest, I never saw any Colombians using cocaine. It was all for market here in the United States, all for market here. And
they didn't have a drug problem.
They didn't have a drug problem. Huh. They had a shipment problem. how to get it here.
They were too busy to have a drug problem.
And so, but my point being, that's a tough neighborhood. I had to deal at that time that we came into the picture. I was the one that was responsible. I had to show Ecopetrol that it was commercially viable. And I had to produce 1 million, to do that, to show the reservoir was viable, I had to produce 1 million barrels of oil.
Holy cow.
And that's hard to do when you don't have infrastructure. I didn't have a pipeline, I didn't have I was 700 miles from the closest refinery where I could sell the oil.
What?
And not only was I 700 kilometers, 700 kilometers from the closest refinery, but in between the field and the refinery was the Andes Mountains. So, I mean, it was tough. So I had to truck oil 1,400 kilometers round trip
What?
for 130 barrel
That's load
of
700
oil
miles.
because at that time you could use most trucks 200 barrels, but because it was heavy crude, you could only carry 130. It was like you could only carry more.
130 barrels?
130 barrels.
That is pretty heavy,
so
dude.
In
the Andes?
It was really
That'd be scary.
12.3 gravity, but I always
Oh,
fudged
man,
and
it's
called it 13. So it just sounded better, 13.
It's a Fibonacci number,
Yeah.
13.
So what we did is we had to build roads.
Jeez.
We used the asphalt from the crude oil
Wow.
to build the roads. We were very we used everything that we could, but basically out there at that time, I had to deal with the Medellin cartel, the guerrilla groups, or two guerrilla groups, FARC and ELN, bad boys, the communist groups. Big kidnapping. That's how they make their money, is kidnapping executives, et cetera, et cetera. Then in addition to that, you had the U.S. CIA, you had the U.S. DEA, you had the Colombian Army, you had the Colombian paramilitaries, which the paramilitaries are who the ranchers would hire to protect them against the FARC and ELN, the communist groups. It was a tough neighborhood. I mean, a very tough neighborhood. And I am happy to say, by 1996, I produced the first 1 million barrels in Rubiales.
Wow.
Trucking.
Fucking a million.
I think at that time we had 140 trucks running around the clock.
Wow.
Trucking. At that time, it was 3,000 barrels a day. I did get it up to 3,000 barrels a day.
Man.
And now it's on pipeline, and I think it was it went back to the government 100% in 2016 at 225,000 barrels a day.
Wow.
And I think it's currently doing. I still keep up with the people.
You got an override in that?
No override. I sold it.
You sold the
we
override
sold
in
we,
that?
we there is no way officially you can have an override legally on that concession.
What if you just pay a bunch of taxes?
So we just
on
had to
There's
sell
gotta
it.
be- there's gotta be a
We
way.
just sold it.
Jeez.
But yeah, and it's made now over 500 million barrels.
Oh my
It's on. It probably has another 250 million barrels left. It'll make about 750 million barrels, and it was a big blob.
When you
4.2 billion barrels in place.
When you showed up to this area, you talk about
Yeah.
no infrastructure, no roads, right? No electricity. And you go back today, like if we were just to get off a plane and start going that direction, what would you see today?
It's totally different. It looks like a refinery out there, where when I was there, it was very simple. Basically, what I did, and I'm proud of it, I took the good old boy Texas development phase down to Columbia, instead, I don't say this wrong, versus the big company versus the Exxon, development phase. And I was drilling those wells. The competitor there was drilling his wells for about $2.5 million a well. And this is a 2,500 foot well.
Whoa. Wow.
I mean, 2,500 feet. And my very first well I drilled was $500,000.
Wow.
That's a big cost savings.
Yeah,
And the
crushed it.
problem with that, again, was there was no infrastructure. So my demob on every piece of equipment I moved out there was heavy. But once you got it there, it was there.
Right.
But it was like an offshore drilling operation onshore.
Wow.
In the middle of the jungle.
Instead of the water.
I say the jungle. It was not I don't know if you have the pictures, but
Yeah.
it's rolling hills. But basically, and the people out there, I had to, Troy, I may be getting off base, but what we did, the people out there are very poor. They had they had to get their water from the rivers, which was relatively good water, but this is strange to say. Our Rubiales produced water was fresher and better water to drink than the water in the river. And
Across the whole field,
across
it was like
the
that?
whole field. Our field, it's a big oil and gas reservoir, hydrodynamic trap with fresh water. The fresh water was going into the basin, and the oil was trying to go out of the basin. And what this is oil, this was Cupiagua, Cusiana oil. Those wells are about 17,000 feet deep.
Oh, wow.
And this is oil that had spilled out of those deeper structures, and it was on its way out of the basin. And over time, it was just a 4.3 billion barrel blob of oil that got stuck because the hydrodynamic trap kept it there.
Right.
All the light ends had gone off of it, and it was just a big blob of 13 gravity oil. Just sitting there, big blob.
Jeez.
And,
what a wild story that is.
Well, the good news is it wasn't salt water. It was fresh water. And basically, at the time we did this or developed this field, I think we were environmentally friendly back then because we had to figure out what to do with all that water. Because those wells, when over 2 or 3 years, they would get up to about 90% water cut, 10% oil.
That's right.
So if you're making 3,000 barrels a day, that's 3,000 barrels a day of oil, and then multiply that by 10. That's how much water. So we decided, and it was really funny, we said, what are we going to do with all this water? And what we did, we actually trucked some of that water, potable water, by some of our trucks that we had to these villages, and we gave them fresh water.
Oh, wow.
It was a good deal. And then the rest of the water we used to grow tree. I had a big tree farm, and I actually
What kind of trees?
Just native. It wasn't pecan trees. I should have done that, but it was. I don't know what kind, but we grew trees and basically used the water from the field to water the trees. So we had a big environmental tree farms.
Look at that.
I'm talking 10,000 acres.
Wow.
Yeah. A lot of water, a lot of trees.
All those people harvesting it all.
Yeah, and then there's jobs for them. We had when we were developing Rubiales at the very beginning, we were building the roads and all that. We had about 300 out there in the field that were working for us in the field, and then at night they disappear. They go to their communities, and a lot of those would work in the cartels to cut the cocaine. And they disappear. So we saw them during the daytime. We didn't see them at night, but we had to coexist. I was not a drug runner. We weren't in the drug business, but we had to coexist with the Medellin cartel and with all the other people. And the only way I could think of common thread to make this work, I'm going to tell you, it has to work for everybody. If you're in a business deal, it has to be a win-win for every person around the table. If it's not a win-win, then that deal will fall apart. Right. So we basically juggled all those balls, and essentially we decided, instead of like the big companies who would spend a lot of money on security, in the field. If you would go to a BP facility, it would look like a prison camp. There was guard, they don't
want people
guard.
Getting held hostage.
You were a prisoner inside this big deal, but that's how they protected the drilling. And then there's the guerrillas are up in the mountains shooting at them.
Wow.
It's a crazy deal. So what we decided is I did at that time. I said, if we take care of the locals, they will be happy, and they will tell the FARC and the ELN that we're good guys.
Yeah, it's
they're hiring 300 of us to work here. In a place they didn't have any work except in the labs.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what we did. We built. I built hospitals too, and basically would give the kids fluoride treatments. we took care of. They didn't even know what a hospital was, or a clinic. I guess you'd call it a clinic. We did build a bigger hospital too, and then for those, I built 2 or 3 barges, and you're not going to believe this. Why would you need a barge in the middle of the jungles of Colombia? Right. The Meta River is a big river that runs through Colombia, and in some parts of that, there's lots of piranha, and those piranha love those little kids.
Whoa!
If they were crossing, so before we would build the barges, most of the people that lived there would essentially cross the river. They would take a chicken, and they would cut the chicken's head to get the blood. They'd put it in the river.
The piranhas would go after it.
And the piranhas would go after that, and they would come upstream.
I was just I was wondering if they had a trick. If I ever encounter piranhas, I find a chicken.
Find you a chicken.
Distract them. Get across the water. I was just thinking. I wonder if there's a trick to this.
Or your wife.
Oh, damn it! Don't do that.
But
I need your.
Sorry,
arm.
I guess I shouldn't be chomping eyes when you're on the speaker. But so we did that. Anyway, long story short, it's a great plan. Sounds like it's going to work. It did for about 3 years, and then all of a sudden, capitalism comes into the picture, and then everybody doesn't think they're making enough money. The people in the field don't think they're making enough money. The community kind of says, maybe you need to go after some of those guys because they're just not paying us enough. And anyway, what happened is one day I wake up and
what year?
This is in 97. This is in 97. This is after Escobar. And basically I had 5 employees kidnapped in the field, boom, gone. And that's a bad deal because, like I said, it's a business in Colombia. And it took me, long story short, it took me 6 months to get those husbands. I had 5 wives and 14 kids mad at me.
Gosh,
One of the worst Christmases I think we ever had was in 97 at home because I was worried about these guys. I'm happy to report all those guys came out. They're okay.
Yeah.
It did take 6 months, and I think, Troy, I'll tell you that story. Once again, no cell phones, no activity, and once they were kidnapped, we knew they were kidnapped because the field told us they were kidnapped, and then we waited. In 3 days, somebody came to our office and brought us a piece of paper and slipped it under the door, and it said, contact us on this, shortwave radio frequency tomorrow at 2 p.m. So basically, that's how we always talked with them, was by shortwave radio.
What was the first conversation? What was
the first conversation is got your guys,
Are you being aggressive, or are you trying to be understanding?
No. They weren't aggressive. We weren't aggressive. They were just saying, it's going to cost you some money if you want if you want to see these guys again. It was a pretty brutal wake-up call. But anyway, that started, and then after the length of time, it gets longer and longer, you get a little more frustrated. You're a little frustrated because there was just no action. Meanwhile, these guys, 3 of them were treated like kings. They were
the prisoners.
Prisoners. There was 5 in the 2 different groups. One was the LN, one was FARC. The FARC treated the guys like prisoners. The ELN treated the guys like they were kings, in that they would give them mosquito nets to sleep at night. Now remember, these guys are up in the Andes Mountains. It's where usually these kidnapping camps are, and they're moving every day. They move, so that if the army's chasing them or somebody's trying to get them, they're not going to find them. Right. And so basically, with that, the guys, there's a lot of mosquitoes, so they sleep in mosquito nets, and they were giving my guys the good mosquito nets and Coca-Cola, plenty of Coca-Cola. and these 3 of the gentlemen who were missing 6 months it was like a vacation. They were outdoorsmen, and they went fishing. They saw places in the Andes that they'll never see again. It was kind of like a vacation.
Except for your families back home.
Yeah,
you
except
can't
they
be
didn't
relaxing.
know. And then the other 3 guys were they were treated miserably. They were locked down every night, shackled, where they couldn't escape, and they weren't given mosquito nets. They weren't hardly given anything. So those 2 guys. So I had 5, 3 and 2. The 3 came out okay. The 2, and then eventually about 3 months into it, we asked for proof of life to prove that the guys were still alive. We needed some proof.
Did you get, at some point you bring in someone who knows how to communicate this situation? Or are you
I can't tell you everything on that, but I can tell you we had professionals from day one.
Okay.
Yeah, you
were approached by professionals that told you they were missing.
We had professionals involved. We had a scenario ready if that happened. And so we brought in professional negotiators to negotiate. And that's the deal. You take the emotion out of it. Basically, you let them take care of the problems with the other side, and it removes us from the emotional attachment.
Man, yeah, but you're left with the emotional attachment of the family.
That's the problem, and that was the problem because I had responsibility for those 14 kids and 5 wives.
Communicate,
and
right?
You can tell them, and you can only tell them what you know.
So
it was a hard 6-month expenditure. Well, anyway, one time when we asked for that, the negotiator said, "Well, we just need proof that these guys are alive." And anyway, they said okay. And usually, what you do there is you either get a newspaper. And the guy holds up the paper, and it's the date, and it shows him, okay, well, he was at least alive the day that, the newspaper. We didn't do that. We basically just asked for some proof, and we got it. They sent in Houston. Now, I'm in Houston at this time. Going back and forth, but basically in Houston, I would get a Federal Express package. The office kind of starts going crazy. I hear women screaming.
Gee.
And I go in. I said, "What's going on?" I didn't know what was going on. And what happened is, we received a beautiful finger with his wedding band on it.
Gosh.
His wedding finger with his wedding band, and it was basically said that this is his proof of life. The next proof of life will be his head. And by the way, we know where you live, in Houston. So the point of that was to get our attention that, okay, this is getting serious. Mm-hmm. So that's what happened. And then after that, we kind of gave up and just kept contacting them. And anyway, long story short, one day a young boy comes to the office, a young Colombian boy, maybe 14, and wanted to speak to the gringo. Well, I was the gringo. So we said, well, what do we have to lose? Let's talk to him. And essentially he said my uncle was one of the leaders of the guerrilla groups, and he said, we can fix this problem really quick if you'll just pay money and do that. And I said, okay, well, let us think about it. And this is, anyway, long story short, we decided to go that route, and we prepared 2 Samsonite suitcases full of dollars, lots of dollars, and we were told to give it to the Red Cross. The next, have a rendezvous with the Red Cross. We gave it to the Red Cross, and when we did that, I told my general manager, I said, we may not ever see any results from this, but at least, it's the best we can do.
Man.
And lo and behold, 2 or 3 days later, all 5 of those guys were out.
Wow.
Every one of them returned to Bogota. And when the one guy with the wedding band got there, he had his finger. He had his wedding band. I mean, he didn't have his wedding band, but he had his finger. So we don't know. We'll never know whose finger that belonged to, but it was there.
To get a better idea of like the Pablo Escobar history, what did you know about him? What was how dangerous of like his cartel?
Now we're going back. That was 97. Pablo was long gone by then. In 90, I met Pablo in 92. Why did I meet Pablo? In Rubiales, our field was about 200 kilometers from Bogota, as the crow flies.
2.3 miles or something.
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
a long ways. I mean, it's. And I say that 200. I think it was 250 kilometers. As the crow flies. What happened is, as I tell you, remember the cartel, the Medellin, the labs are in the same area as our field. So, there in Colombia, you have to have permits for airstrips. If you have airstrips, and I had 3 airstrips that I used to fly all of our supplies from Bogota to the Rubiales field. And it's miraculous. When I didn't have those airstrips, we used trucks to bring the supplies from Bogota to the field. And I cannot understand why, but every time we did that, only about 30% of the supplies would make it to the field by truck. I don't know why, but I have a good reason. Everybody got a piece of that truck on the way driving there. I started flying the DC-3s, and man, miracle, 100% delivery. Not a problem at all. But we had to have permits with the Colombian Army for those airstrips for specific lengths. Those DC-3s, I think we were at 3,500 or 4,000 feet runways, and that was it. So anyway, what happened all of a sudden in 91, 92, all of a sudden, the Army were calling us and said, we're getting ready to blow up your airstrips. And I said, why are you going to blow up our airstrips? We have a permit. And they said, well, have you seen your airstrip? I said, no. And to be factual, when I operated Rubiales those years, I only went there. I was only in the field 2 times.
Wow.
The whole time. It was too dangerous.
The whole time.
I helicoptered in. I couldn't even stay 10 minutes and helicoptered out because you're a kidnapping victim.
Right.
Or you could be. And I didn't want to I just didn't do that. And basically my staff said, you don't need to be doing that. But all of a sudden, those airstrips overnight were getting lengthened from 3,500 feet to 5,000 feet.
Bigger planes.
Concrete for jets. Yeah, Lear jets. And essentially, it wasn't us doing it.
Yeah.
And basically, the Army said, you got a permit for this, and this is it, and we're going to blow up that section. So they started blowing up that longer section. And we didn't know what was going on. Anyway, long story short, after that happened several times, we finally got I got a phone call, or we did, where it said, okay, Escobar, he wants to meet the gringo. This time he was out of prison. He had put himself in a self-prison because he didn't want to be extradited to the United States. And his agreement with the country was that he would put himself in his own prison. Okay. So that's what he was doing. So basically, he broke out of that deal fell apart. He broke out of that prison. So he was kind of on the run for about a year between the time he left that prison and I believe they shot him in Medellin. And that's the time where I met him. And he wanted to meet because he wanted to know why the runway, and
Right,
we're neighbors. Again, I was in a very difficult neighborhood, and we went. Can't tell you all the details, but all I can say is I had to go see him. It was a nervous day, and I went there, went to see him, and when we went there, he had rented, I guess, or we didn't know where we were going. I was blindfolded, and so was the other two guys with me. We were blindfolded to not know. But then when we got there, they took the blindfolds off, and we knew we were at one of his restaurants that was closed that he had rented, and basically it was an interrogation to see why are you,
who was really behind all
who
this?
why are you, because I kept telling him it's not me. Anyway, we told him it wasn't us, and this and led to another thing, and he had his two, when we met with his first, what I'm gonna call his right hand lieutenants, and these guys were, I'm gonna say one was, I think, Harvard educated, and the other one was Yale. Very impressive. They spoke better English than I spoke, and they said, we need to know. Anyway, the three of us were talking to them, and they said okay, and they left, and basically we were sat down to have lunch, and I can't go into everything, but it was a very nice setup. He had about 13, 14 girls in the room too, and there was only about 4 or 5 of us guys, so I don't know what those girls were doing there, but they were there.
That's how he rolled.
Yeah, that was his playbook, but he came in, they went back, talked to him, and the next thing I know, we're sitting there eating, and he walks through the door, like over there, and I never forget, he had a little straw cowboy hat on, brown boots, blue jeans, and a brown, what's that? Dressy cowboy shirt. What? Yeah, and he came in, and he looked at, and he's not he's maybe 5'8", and I was a little taller than that, but he was very charismatic. The energy in the room just changed with him. And long story short, he sat and we talked, and he said, I can fix the problem now that I know you're not the problem. And we sat there for a while, and we said, well, what do we do? And we said, do we write this? Is this some type of agreement we write up, or what do we do? Mm-hmm. And he basically, hit the table real hard, and he said, no. He said, my word is my bond. And he said, I expect your word better be your bond. And we said, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. And that was it. We left that meeting, but before we did, he said, by the way, he said, I want to tell you something. He said, I appreciate what you're doing for that community. He said, I get it. And he said, you do community assistance. You built the hospitals. You built the barges. Wow. He said, you're good. He said, you're good company. You're a good company. He said that I want you to know I know that, because everybody in Colombia, for the most part, they love Pablo because he was the Robin
Hood.
That. Oh yeah, he was hated by the government and the army, and he did a lot of bad things. He blew up airplanes. When I lived in Colombia, I would wake up 2 or 3 times in the morning in Bogota with plate glass all over my bed. My windows would have blown out because they had car bombs. He was terrorizing the people in order to put pressure on the government not to, his biggest fear, and it never happened, was to get extradited to the United States. And so basically he had all these terrible tactics. There's no doubt he was he was a bad guy, but he had a heart for the people. That's what I can say. So anyway, long story short, we left. We never had a problem again with the longer runways, and he did everything he said he would do. The reason I tell you all this is it's not just what you learn in your textbooks in school, and there's life experiences. And man, don't grab them, take them, do it with gusto, because you only have one chance. And if your gut tells you to do it, you better start tomorrow or start immediately. And that's it. I look at it. Would I do it again? Yes, because I look at all the experiences I had out of that, and it was something else.
Sheesh.
I don't know if that answers. There's a lot more to all, but I just got to watch a lot of it.
Understandable. Now we transition into the completion part of the show and talk more about, the learning from all that. I imagine, history is repeating itself again. It's just, it's changed its form, and the opposition of oil and gas development. It could be the cartel. You put whoever you want as an opposition, but there certainly still is one. And the fact that when you actually learn what oil and gas is doing, and you want someone to change, but your perspective doesn't allow you to understand how that change needs to happen, unless you go out and try to do it yourself, which they'll never do. Yeah. They're never going to try to get into oil and gas and produce energy for the world to use. No. But they're going to tell you shouldn't do it. Yeah. Right? But your story, and I think the story still today, is just as important, is that go and do it. We need the energy. Yeah. Go and do it, and everything's going to work out.
With gusto.
With gusto.
And I'll tell you, I'll finish with one thing that I think is the funniest part of this. Once we paid, again, the Medellin cartel was really never a problem with me. It was the guerrilla groups. Mm-hmm. Once we paid, we filled those Samsonite suitcases up with money, and we paid the ransom. About 2 weeks went by, and we're sitting there, and I was at that time back in the office, and somebody says, that young kid is here to see you again. And that young kid, that 14-year-old kid that told us about his uncle who gave the money, he had those 2 Samsonite suitcases with him. And I swear to God, he came in and he said, my uncle said, you're a good man, you're a good company. And he said, we're honorable men. These are your suitcases. That's the way it ended. And they were not, they were empty.
Oh, man.
They were empty.
Damn it. Wow.
I don't know. It's
pretty cool.
Yeah, it was an interesting day.
How do you see, as a professional now, being through what you've done, are you seeing a lot of investment opportunities in oil and gas right now? No. What do you see as a professional?
This is interesting. I have right now probably, I call it my swan song, the best portfolio of 32 prospects, all 3D, analog, conventional, in red states. And it has been hard, all 3D shot. We've spent a lot of money.
Yeah, so you got great control.
And we've got, everything. Everything's 3D control with analog. It's 80% gas, 20% oil. It's about a 80-to-1 return on your investment. Fast. That's it. My point being, I'm about $10 million short of raising $40 million, and it is the hardest $30 million I've ever put together. And it's a wildcatter's dream for me. It is. And I see that, and that's so hard to put together for the fossil fuel. Fast forward, I have another green project in California, of all places, that's a biomass plant. It'll be the largest biomass plant built in California.
That's turning corn
biomass. Basically, I'm out there in the San Joaquin Basin,
the Great
around
Basin.
Vineyards.
Yeah,
and
Bakersfield
the
side
almond.
or Fresno side?
This is right out. This is Mountain View. It's 20 miles from Bakersfield.
Wow.
One of the best projects I've ever had. Went in there, drilled a well 3 years ago, and it was the best well. It was the best well in America, the best IP. That well made 600 barrels a day for 2 years, just nonstop, water free. There in Bakersfield. And the landowner made so much money, and he had specifically the vineyards, as well as the almond trees. Half of his property, and I have a picture. I need to send it to you. It's a picture of me at the wellhead with the vineyards on one side and the almond tree. It was again. It's the same theory. We were coexisting. And he came to me, and he said, "Alan, which vineyards you want to tear down next?" Because he was making more money on his royalty on his 600 barrel a day oil and gas well, and he was 89 years old.
Oh, wow.
And he was the happiest guy. But my point being out there and seeing all the almond trees and all that, we had another idea that, let's take this biomass, because this biomass project is a $500 million price tag. $500 million. I raised that money in 90 days.
For the biomass.
For the biomass plant. I can't even find the extra $10 million for the best conventional oil and gas play, 80 to return on investment at these prices. So you asked me where we're going?
Yeah.
Listen, fossil fuels is here. It's going to be, and those deals are going to get done. It's just harder what I've learned out of this, you have to find the chemistry. All the big money the fund money has gone to the ESG projects. They're just ESG sensitive. And I find the family offices, people, the wildcatters, or people that there's still money out there. It's just harder to get. But I'm telling you, the day is coming, and it's not soon. It is soon. I think it's 3 years away, that everyone is going to they're going to see where it's so lack of oil.
Right.
Of the fossil fuel.
Right. That energy.
So I see it. And this, like I said, it's going to be here forever. It is. It just may be harder to get the money until this, and I'm sorry, until this this pixie dust, and it's sad because it's the governments that are pushing it.
Well, it's certainly
It's
a lot
the
of their
governments
money.
are pushing it. But my point is, I'm a contrarian. I'm running the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And I may be right, I may be wrong, but I sure am going to have fun. As you can tell, I've had fun doing exploration.
Yeah. Modern exploration in this whole area right here in Balcones Fault System, I think, is wide open. I think there's so many spots in between all those little fields, like a Somerset, and in between that and Bigfoot, or all these little leases, Lavernia, all these little leases. I think the whole system is way bigger than we think it is.
There is so much oil and gas to be found right here in just the great state of Texas. Still. So get out there and explore. I'm just make sure you're driving the F-150 gas trucks and not the Tesla truck. I like the Tesla, by the way. I don't have any problems with it. I just don't drive one.
Well, shoot. That's the completion part of the show. We talked about energy, the future. We talked about your story. Any questions from an audience, maybe? Yeah, what do you got, Cassiano?
Yeah, I have a question. I just, this attitude of you, what do you think in your upbringing, or maybe you had a specific mentor that made you think that you can go operate in the middle of Columbia, or you can go talk with, this drug lord, what in your past, but, whether it was at university, in geology, or your first job, if they don't get a job for major geology, if they want to get oil and gas, they kind of feel like, oh, well, there's nothing else.
What do I do now? Right.
What do you think drives people like that to have that independent attitude?
I hate to say this, but I think it was my stupidity. Because I look at it and I go, man, why did I do that? But no, I have always been opposite. I really believe in being a contrarian and at least running that opposite path until you see, oh, you better go figure out why everybody's running the other direction. And that's it. So and let me tell you, gosh, thank God we have academia, because I learned more in that classroom than, as far as exploration geology. I got to keep talking this way, but then I could have learned, I guess, from personal experience. But what I'm trying to answer your question, what did I see different? I guess when I did that, it was not that hard to get on a plane and go, man, now it's difficult. It's just a total different environment now. But at that time, it was not that hard to get on a plane. My wife will tell you, I got on a plane and I said, I'll try to call you when I get to Columbia, but there was no guarantee. They're having telephone strikes or this or that. There's many times I went down there, she didn't even know if I made it or if I was coming back.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was that. But I guess it was I was in it for at that time, I was just excited.
There you go.
To do things, and it's really, I'm afraid if I had gone to work for a major, and let me tell you, I have many friends that have had fantastic careers at the majors, and I applaud them because they're happy, and they've made a lot of money, and they've got a nice nest egg, and
sure, and
they're great people. That I don't think I would have lasted in a major 3 weeks. I'd been fired. I'd have been fired. You just, again, it's my gut. I guess it was really my gut. I'll end this and I'll say this, so you need to know. I'm very religious. You couldn't tell by the way I'm talking about stuff today, but I believe that this was God's plan. God's plan was for me to meet her. The stability in my life, and at the end of the day, that energy. We talk about fossil fuel energy. I talk about energy from the Holy Spirit. I'm just telling the truth. And at the end of the day, that's back then, man, I was following that more than anything. I tell you, when you're called to meet Pablo Escobar, you better have some higher energy. That's all I can say. And that's it. So I've relied on I don't know if it answers your question, but I've relied on God. I've relied on God. The Holy Spirit, in my opinion, is your gut.
Right.
You get that gut feeling, that's Him telling, go for it.
My daughter's only 4, but I'm already trying to get to the concept. I'm like, look, when you're approached with a problem, you're going to feel an instinct.
They answer.
And nature is positive and negative. Energy is positive and negative. You can't have a positive without the negative. So I tell her that you have an instinct, and that's telling you you're either going to choose to do something positive or negative in that moment, whether it's push your brother or take something or whatever, right? You're going to have the option. And in that moment, that gut feeling is that, I think, the understanding of where am I going with this? What is my gut telling me? It's positive or negative.
That's right.
And just go with that gut feeling and go positive, right? You always want to go positive. So that's what we Stay Positive book. Thank you, Alan Lazenby Jr.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for listening to probably a boring podcast. But,
it wasn't
you stayed. You stayed.
It wasn't for me. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.